So here are some examples. You can see all sorts of patterns and metals, and the final look is quite different. So I'm going to show you how to create some advanced examples from this. So let's start with this one here. So we know how to create a basic radial pattern, but how do we create the one we see in this photo, the one that's repeating itself over and over again? So to do that, we need to create a custom texture map. And it's quite easy to do in Photoshop. Let's start with a new file. I'm going to make it square. Alright, and then we're going to use the gradient tool. I'm going to slightly modify my gradient. I want to add a pure white colored control point in the center and a black color on the right. So that's going to be our gradient. Okay, and this sort of orientation doesn't work for us. We need to use this. So let's see what's it called, angle gradient. We need to set it to angle gradient, and you can see we can create something like we need for radial anisotropic effect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I drag from my center point outwards. Okay, so the gradient is now centered. And now using the selection tool, I'm just going to hold shift and drag from one corner to the other. Okay, copy, create new file. Let's make this one large, something like 10 by 10,000, just so we have enough space to place these little rings. Okay. So the pattern goes from left to right, one row, next row again from left to right, and next row, so something like that. Let's try to recreate that. Okay. Starting from here. Let's see how much they overlap. Almost one full circle. I mean, almost one half circle, but a bit less. So duplicate the layer, press Ctrl J, and move it like that. I think that's perfect. Okay. Actually, I'm going to change my grid a little bit. Let's set it to 700 pixels. Okay, 700 looks about right. And I think four circles will be enough. All right, let's duplicate again. Move over here. And make a few copies. Make sure you snap to these grid points. All right. And that's fine. Now I'm going to use my rectangular selection tool and select an area I want to repeat as a pattern. and looks like this will work. Now copy merged, create a new file, paste, and this should be a tileable texture. You can check it by using the offset filter, adjusting the value, and as you can see there are no seams at all, so it's tiling perfectly. And let's save it. I'm going to save it as a PNG file. Right. And let's go to our test scene. It's a simple box lit with an HDRI image. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a new V-Ray material for the box. Okay, so let's start with the basic metal. Maybe darkish gray diffuse color, bright reflections. Fresnel at maybe 80, that's good for a metal. And change the BRDF type to Word. Okay. And let's blur the reflections to 0.8. So that's going to be our starting point. Okay, looks pretty good. Just going to change the environment to something darker. Okay, that's better. Right, so now we need to add the anisotropic effect. To do that, we go down here to BRDF, set the anisotropy to maybe 0.95 or so, and add the map in the rotation slot. And I'm just going to use the map we just created. Okay, let's turn on the preview in viewport. And maybe let's tile it 2 by 2 and render. And that's a pretty good effect. I'm gonna turn on the V-Ray RT to show you how it looks when rotated. Okay, let's look at it. Takes a while to render, and here we go. And then you can see the anisotropic effect works pretty well here. If you wish, you can change the angle by rotating your map. Let's say let's rotate it 45 degrees, and the reflections are rotated as well. So that's an easy way you can adjust the reflections just the way you like them. Okay, so that's the first material. Let's make a copy, name it brushed metal rough, and this is going to be a bit more tricky to create. So what I'm going to do is create a texture map that looks a bit like this, or like this, sort of like you're taking an orbit sander and sanding the metal in random patterns, and it creates this nice look like this. So you can create something like this by using Photoshop. I'm selecting regular brush and going to brush options. Okay. let's start with the basic brush. I'm going to show you how to set it up. Okay, starting from brush tip shape. Set the spacing to 1% so it's nice and smooth. Then let's move on to shape dynamics. Make sure you set it to pen pressure if you have a Wacom tablet or something similar. And now you go to color dynamics and set the brightness jitter to 100%. And what this does is creates this jittering effect as you drag on your canvas. And this is exactly what we want for this texture. Okay, I'm gonna increase my brush size. And in random patterns, like I'm moving the sander, I'm just gonna add these squiggly lines. So make sure to cover it all in a random pattern. Alright, something like this. Looks pretty good, I think. Maybe let's sharpen it a bit. Okay, let's set it to 1 pixel and 100%. Or 130. And let's save this texture as a PNG file. Okay, sanding pattern. Right, and back to our scene. I'm gonna clear my rotation map for this second material. Just clear that. And clear the anisotropy as well. Set it to 0. And what I want to do is I want to use this map first in this anisotropy slot. Okay, like this. Make sure you assign it to the object. And you can already sort of see this effect in action. Maybe let's set the anisotropy to 0.99 and blend the texture with the value. Maybe let's try at 50. And let's try a different axis. Let's try X, or Y, or X, or Z. Okay, let's leave it at Z for now. Alright. And I want to add an isotropic rotation as well. Actually, I'm gonna reduce the tiling a little bit to 0.7 to make the pattern larger. Okay, good. And let's add an isotropic rotation. Zero 0.7, and now it looks just wrong and weird. Let's rotate the texture so it doesn't match exactly with the one we used in the anisotropy slot. And now let's make the texture much weaker. Let's try at 50. Okay, good. And maybe a different axis might be better for this example. Let's try X. Okay, now the pattern looks too perfect and doesn't work like I want it to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix this map with itself, but rotate the second instance a different amount so it's kind of a different texture. Okay, let's try to mix it at 50 first. And it looks already better. Nice scratch pattern. So what we can try is add the noise map as a mix amount. And this is going to allow us to control the mixing a bit better. Okay, so for the noise map, I want to increase the contrast. Like this. And probably we need to reduce the size so you can see the effect. Alright, that's better. And it's not displayed correctly in the material editor. For some reason the noise is much smaller here than on our model. But no need to worry about that. As long as it looks fine in the rendered window, it's good to go. Okay. And you can try some lower values or higher values, and you can get some different effects. Okay. I think something like 30 works better here. Maybe 40. That's a nice look. And you can try to reduce the reflections and the reflection glossiness for a more shiny look like this. Or you can increase them to tighten up on these bright spots. Okay, so these materials vary so much that it's hard to give you some concrete rules. You must stick to just go with what looks right to your eye. So for example, I like this result, so this is what I'm gonna use as my final material. Okay, and so that's brushed metal with rough surface. You can add a bump map as well. Just copy the anisotropic rotation map into the bump slot and set the value a bit smaller, like 2 or so. Okay, and you can mix it one more time with the regular noise map. And just mix it at 50, and it makes the surface a bit more uneven. Okay, maybe the noise map is a bit too small. Let's try it at 10. And that's an interesting rough sanded metal material. Right. And looks different depending on the axis you view it from. I mean the angle. Okay, and you can once more play again with this. Okay, UV vectors derivation axis and get a different result. So depending on how you want this anisotropic effect to look, just pick the one that looks right to you. Okay.